Sometimes life is wonderful, and sometimes it's not. Cherish the good, but always be prepared for life's challenges. At Private Healthcare, we provide the peace of mind you deserve. With Private Healthcare, you'll get the coverage you want and healthcare you need. If your employer doesn't supply healthcare coverage and you don't qualify for Medicare or Medicaid, you need to give us a call right now. Private Healthcare is private health insurance for ages 65 and under with medical, dental, vision, and even prescription coverage. When life comes at you unexpectedly, you need to be ready, and health insurance is your financial safety net. Health insurance has never been so easy and affordable. If you're looking for health coverage at the best price and your annual household income is $35,000 or more, give us a call at 800-733-6860. 800-733-6860.
Welcome to the Turnpike Sports Spotlight. Dave Weishottle with you. This is going to be a very interesting year in the gaming industry. Legislators are going to have to deal with a whole host of different issues. Included in those issues are how to deal with sweepstakes sites in the internet, as well as how to best protect the players who use all different types of online gaming platforms. Also, what will the new online gambling market look like in Brazil, which just launched? And luckily, Vixio Regulatory Intelligence has put out several very important reports dealing with these issues. And to tell us all about these important reports on the line, we have James Kilsby, Gambling Compliance and Regulation Analyst from Vixio. James, welcome back to the show.
Dave, pleasure to be with you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, and thank you for taking the time to talk about these issues. It's so incredible what Vixio does. I mean, like I said, Vixio has released 3 amazing reports, and from my perspective, they're eye-opening reports. And you know, when it comes to guiding the gaming industry in this country and around the world, Vixio is so important. But remind the people out there who aren't part of the gaming industry, what is Vixio and what is its role in the gaming industry?
Sure, yeah. So Vixio is a leading RegTech provider that provides compliance information, regulatory intelligence, and analysis on the global gaming industry. We're headquartered in London, but with offices in Washington, D.C., which is where I'm based. And Vixio offers comprehensive, actionable intelligence on compliance and policy issues in the gaming industry and all of the sectors that fall within that, from sports betting, land-based casinos, lotteries, online gaming, etc. And we've been established for over 17 years now, so really built domain expertise in this area and been able to chronicle and map out how regulation of gaming in all its guises has evolved over that period of time. So developed deep-seated expertise on various issues as it relates to online gambling in particular.
You know, and speaking of issues, one of the important issues right now, everyone's talking about in the United States, what do we do about the sweepstakes sites on the internet? And recently, Vixio released a report entitled U.S. Sweepstakes Key Trends and Must-Know Facts. It just seems like everyone's talking about sweepstakes sites. Just so everyone's on the same page, when we use the term sweepstakes, what are we referring to and what kind of game sites are they?
So sweepstakes are not new. You're exactly right. This is the hot topic, the topic du jour in the gaming industry. But the concept of a sweepstake is absolutely not new. Been around decades and decades. And in a nutshell, sweepstakes are promotional contests where participants can win prizes without a mandatory purchase or payment. So they are chance-based opportunities to win prizes or money, but they don't necessarily involve staking of consideration by the player. Sweepstakes have been and continue to be used by just myriad types of different companies, right? When you buy a product and have an opportunity to enter a contest to receive some kind of promotional prize as part of that is a sweepstake. So this is not new. What is relatively new has emerged over the past few years is we are seeing the emergence of websites and platforms and apps that do have an appearance similar to an online casino site or a sports betting platform, and these offerings are giving players the opportunity to play casino-style games and make sports bets of a kind under the guise of sweepstakes. So what is new is not the concept of sweepstakes; it's the emergence of sweepstakes platforms that have an appearance that is similar to online casinos like we have in New Jersey and Michigan and Pennsylvania, and to a lesser extent, but very much emerging, is sort of sports betting type platforms that
anytime we're talking about online gaming, we have to look at the regulation. And when we're
Absolutely.
talking about regulation of sweepstakes in the United States, what regulation do we look at? I mean, do they fall under the federal legislation? Do they fall under state legislation? And I'm asking this as a lawyer. I want to know, when I'm looking at a sweepstakes entity, where am I looking for the regulation? So who is primarily in charge of regulating sweepstakes in the U.S.?
It's twofold, two layered. In that sweepstakes are generally permissible under federal law, specifically the Deceptive Mail Prevention Enforcement Act, and that, I guess, establishes the fundamental framework for sweepstakes by allowing them to be offered on the proviso that no purchase is required for entry into the sweepstakes contest, and that the competition is determined by chance rather than skill. So there is a federal overlay that allows for sweepstakes to be exempted from federal laws on gambling and to be offered. Having said that, like many other forms of gaming, most other forms of gaming, this is a state-by-state issue.
Yeah.
Individual states do have their own specific laws that address sweepstakes contests, and familiar story for this industry, those laws vary state to state.
Yeah.
So there are different definitions of what a permissible sweepstake contest may or may not be in across the different states, and they're also less of an issue, less sweeping really, but there are some specific sort of bonding and restrictions on cash prizes in a handful of states, including in Florida and New York. That gets to why in the sweepstakes area there are some of the prominent sweepstakes brands and new offerings. They are not necessarily available in all 50 states. They may be available in 40 plus, but a state like Washington, Idaho, two that spring to mind, they have sort of stricter definitions of what permissible sweepstakes contest may be, different definitions of gambling as well. So that's why you have various state by state. This is mainly a state by state issue, but with that federal overlay at the starting point.
Well, speaking to that, and states are different. There are some states in the U.S. have sent cease and desist letters to certain sweepstakes operators. I guess a lot of states are saying one of the main issues with a lot of people in the gaming industry is that state legislation sweepstakes are not specifically addressed. However, that doesn't stop certain state agencies from sending cease and desist letters to some of these operators. I mean, I know Michigan and Delaware have told sweepstakes operators to shut down. And going forward, do you see that trend continuing, that more and more sweepstakes operators would be told to shut down and cease in more and more states in the future coming up?
It's certainly possible, and certainly something that we are watching for at Vixio in 2025 and potentially beyond. Because you're absolutely right. We did see the emergence of this in 2024, actually late 23, with at least 3 states that are publicly known about that have issued cease and desist letters to prominent sweepstakes platforms, Michigan, Connecticut, and Delaware specifically. There are a couple of factors at play as to whether we will see more states doing this, or to the extent we do see more, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a sort of blanket universal trend of every state pursuing this action. It does come down to legal definitions on a state-by-state basis. around permissible sweepstakes contests, but also gaming law related definitions. And I think what we've seen to date, those states I mentioned, Connecticut, Michigan, they are states that have legal and regulated iGaming, online casino gaming, and that's another element here, is whether under the sort of interpretation of and in the view of the regulatory officials of gaming regulators in those states and potentially at an attorney general level, does a sweepstake platform meet the definition of internet gaming under a state gaming law, and then what the sweepstakes platform is alleged to be is a unlicensed online casino platform under an internet gaming law. So that's what we've seen today, is a handful of states that have iGaming taking the view that sweepstakes platforms are unlicensed iGaming operators under their internet gaming laws, and therefore taking action. So such as there is a trend to date that we know of, there may be other activities that's not in the public domain, but to the extent that it is, we've seen action being taken by some of those states that have lawful internet gaming, taking action to send these cease and desist letters to prominent brands that are offering sweepstakes platforms that do not fall under that framework. So it's certainly something that could continue, and something we're watching for. And if it just you mentioned our report, and we flagged that there and elsewhere on Vixio. Another possibility is whether sweepstakes becomes a legislative issue in 2025. So will we see lawmakers in various states looking to amend state laws on sweepstakes or state laws on gambling in order to clarify that, casino-based or sports-based or other types of sweepstakes online platforms are illegal in those states. The reason why I think it's something to watch is maybe 10 or so years ago, we saw an emergence of internet cafes offering sweepstakes-based machines that looked a bit like slot machines, and there was a clear legislative response to that in Florida and Virginia, and I think North Carolina and various other states have taken action. So there's some precedent for states to act to close, to tighten laws when it comes to sweepstakes offerings that seem to be crimping on regulated gaming operations. We will see. It's again just something we're watching for, among others, in the months ahead.
What has been the response from the regulated operators with regard to sweepstakes? I mean, certainly they've told me, it's unfair that they can operate without paying a licensing fee, or they don't follow the same rules that regulated operators have to follow just because they found a loophole in the law. But I've also heard some people from the regulated operators say, you know what, maybe we should take a look at their business model. Maybe we can learn some things from the sweepstakes operators. What have you been hearing with regard to the feelings of the regulated operators in this country?
Both of those things for sure.
Okay.
That's absolutely sort of conflicting views across the broader gambling landscape as to what to do about sweepstakes. Is it an opportunity? Is it a threat or a risk? A couple of levels. There are certainly licensed and regulated gambling operators and suppliers that view sweepstakes as a threat. Some would take the view that while this is, to the extent there's legal uncertainty around sweepstakes, major gaming operators and some suppliers are not comfortable participating in the market, because in the event that sweepstakes are found to not be legal, again, a future hypothetical event, then the licenses of the regulated gaming operators could be under threat. So that's an area of concern. Having said that, this is a fast-growing market that has reach into at least 40 plus states, if not quite 50. Whereas the pace of expansion of regulated sports betting and especially iGaming is much, much, much slower. So there is opportunities to build brand recognition and scale in sweepstakes that can be obtained much quicker and at lower cost than when it comes to regulated gaming. So that there's conflict there, and I think the lack of comfort and to a degree lack of clarity around sweepstakes is something that is unwelcome in the regulated operators, because they many of them are not comfortable proceeding in uncertainty. They like licensing and regulation and clarity before they pursue different ventures.
Well, certainly questions have surfaced about sweepstakes operators. Is there enough rules and regulations in place to protect players? I mean, obviously, like you said, legislators are going to have to take a look at that. Do you think they're going to have to formulate new rules and regulations for sweepstakes operators, or do you think they'll amend existing rules and regulations to include sweepstakes operators? I mean, what do you think will happen either at the federal or state level with regard to regulations for sweepstakes operators?
We don't know. There's a simple answer to that. I think it's most likely for the foreseeable future remain an issue that's addressed on a state by state basis, and that may sweepstakes cafes issue is instructive there. We may see some legislative activity, some law enforcement activity, and we may see no activity and the status quo continuing in other states. So that seems the most likely outcome, and for minimum of 2025 this will remain a area where there is different approaches being taken in different states, and it's going to remain fluid for the time being.
Well, speaking of player protection, Vixio released another amazing report about the player protection outlook, not only for this country, but for around the world. That's such a huge issue for the gambling operators all around the globe. And I'm curious, what was the scope of Vixio's player protection outlook, and what did you hope to impart to people who read this report?
Yeah, so one of the regular pieces of intelligence that Vixio publish many other things on a daily basis, but each month we publish outlook reports that are designed to be forward-looking and identifying future trends to watch, as well as sort of analysing current regulations and market data on either hot topics or on particular markets. So one of those regular areas that we look to and produce outlooks on is on player protection, so policy matters that relate to responsible gambling. And this report really provides stakeholders across the industry a global view on key trends in the area of player protection and responsible gambling. And as I say, takes a global perspective on that, so the industry can really think about the future in this pivotal area that I think really is existential for the industry, let alone
I got to tell you, it's an absolutely eye-opening report, especially for someone like me who works in the gaming industry, to see where the gaming industry is headed with regard to player protection. And one issue for the gaming industry right now is artificial intelligence. And I know many operators use AI to customize experiences for customers based on their past performances or preferences. But it looks like AI could move beyond the marketing aspects in the gaming industry and actually be used for player protection. What are some of the proposed uses of AI when it comes to player protection, especially when it comes to something called large language models? I think everyone in the gaming industry are going to have to know that term pretty soon.
Yeah, sure. So you're right. I think the deployment of AI in the gaming industry, I mean, not just gaming, just almost every industry.
Yeah, everything.
That is a fundamental question that will play out and play out probably quicker than anyone will anticipate. And you flagged quite rightly that AI can be used for marketing and customization.
Sure.
Your experience. That's absolutely one use case, but we are already seeing AI being used for player protection purposes in the industry. So to the extent that you can use AI to spot patterns and based on past behavior and recommend bets, customize the experience for the player. AI is being used and can be used and can increasingly be used to analyze past player behavior with more recent or current player behavior and flag indicators of problematic spend or problematic play. That's something that operators in various jurisdictions, including New Jersey and Ontario in North America, have a regulatory obligation to monitor player behavior and respond to it. There's a lot of nuance there, so I won't go into it. But AI, there are AI solutions, and it's being used, and I think it's increasingly be used to flag to players when they are changing their behavior in ways that may be problematic. So I think that's a fundamental use case for AI in the gambling industry that will be for player protection purposes. I think another question for regulators to your first point really is, to what extent do there need to be guardrails around how AI can be used to promote gambling? Again, that's something I think industry and its regulators and policymakers are really just starting to think about. And you mentioned LLMs. There's very much the possibility that LLMs could be used in customer service to provide faster, responsible gambling advice or answer player queries in a supported manner. Using AI chatbots to support players when they are looking for guidance or support on a responsible gambling level. There is a use case for that we can see, but I think there are certainly a couple of challenges there. Will players be comfortable when it comes to what is the extra value of a human interaction, particularly for players in distress? I don't think there's any that's a natural question, really.
And Vixio rightly brought that up. I mean, will people be comfortable talking about gambling issues, which are pretty sensitive issues and personal issues? I mean, you're talking to a computer program. Is that what LLMs are really basically are?
Fundamentally, yes. Yeah. So there is players may still prefer to talk to a human, and most gambling counselors and real sort of professionals with deep-seated expertise in responsible gambling are highly trained people who respond to players on a personal level in different ways. So I think there would be a may never get there, may never want to get there, not at the point where the industry or we can outsource player protection at this kind of interaction level to an LLM or to AI. But I think there is a role in the near term and going forward for AI and LLMs to support human interaction when it comes here. But I think we're far from the point of displacement, and I think that would be something that on an ongoing basis regulators will continue to require human interaction as well.
Another issue that Vixio brought up in the report is that several European governments and regulators have introduced or are going to introduce new duties of care requirements for gaming operators. I mean, that really perked my ears up. And in fact, a new unit was created in the Netherlands to monitor how gambling operators fulfill their duty of care. Explain what that is, because I think that is one of the important subjects that gaming operators around the world have to be aware of.
Yeah, the concept of a duty of care is relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
Complex at kind of a legal level, but conceptually simple, really, where the notion is that in certain jurisdictions, fundamentally in Central Europe, Central and Western Europe, operators have this duty of care that obligates them to they are responsible for ensuring that their players do not sort of spend beyond their means or fall into gambling addiction, and that kind of obligates them among other things, to proactively monitor and safeguard players from gambling-related harm, identify at-risk behaviour, and take sort of steps that can be used to mitigate problems, intervening where necessary, suggesting limits, etc. But really, it's the concept that there is a responsibility of the operator. The operator has a duty of care to its players to prevent them from suffering from addiction and other problems related to gambling. This is a multifaceted issue, even though the concept is simple.
Sure.
In that, what does it mean, and what does that entail? Having a duty of care. To what extent? How far does that obligation extend on the operator's behalf, and responsibility extend on that behalf? And we're seeing different jurisdictions have different responses.
Yeah.
To this. Quite recently, the Swedish government gave the Swedish regulator power to set out quite detailed requirements for what a duty of care means. You mentioned the Netherlands, but then also in the UK, there was a recent court ruling that found outside of defined regulatory obligations, actually operators do not have a general duty of care to prevent addiction on their players, say outside of what they're mandated to do through regulation. So this is a area that is conceptually makes sense, but really quite complicated and quite
it is
different on a country by country basis. It's not really something that has come up directly in the US and in North America to date. We are seeing some litigation generally in this area, but the sort of the legal concept of a duty of care and how that might be sort of enforced or imposed through gambling regulations is not yet been something that is come to North America, but it's a hot topic in Europe for sure.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned the issue of affordability, and I think that's going to be something that's going to be discussed a lot this year. I know, like you said, the concept is big in the UK, and I know Vixio pointed out that the UK prefer the term risk or vulnerability checks instead of affordability. I guess to put in its simplest terms, how much can a customer of a gaming platform afford to lose, and what is the responsibility of the gaming operator regard to that issue? In the U.S., we have proposed federal legislation that touches on that subject called the Safe Bet Act. What is the idea about affordability, and do you think that will be something that gaming operators in the near future will have to contend with? Because that is a huge issue, and I don't know where the gaming operators can even start to address something like that.
That, again, is similar to the duty of care, and to some degree overlapping on that area. Yeah. The notion that the gambling operator should have steps in place to prevent their players from spending beyond their means is a relatively simple one to understand, and it kind of has obvious appeal really to policymakers in Europe, North America, and beyond. I think that makes sense, right? That players should not be spending more than they can afford to on gambling. So the question becomes really to what extent should the onus be on the operator to prevent that? There are different arguments at play. One is that it's a good thing for operators to use tools that may be at their disposal to prevent financial harm being incurred by their players. That's one argument. On the other hand, there are privacy concerns. Should people, frankly, be able to spend their own money as they wish to? That's one level of the argument, particularly in the UK, where this is an advanced policy discussion. And then thirdly, how could this realistically be implemented in practice to the extent that it doesn't become a real barrier between the player and the operator? Live conversation in the UK is if operators are obliged to conduct affordability checks on their players, and the players don't like that, and that's an onerous process. What's to stop the player just going and playing with an illegal site that is not going to be doing any affordability checks on them? I think all three of those issues are real, and all have some merits as part of this debate. So roughly where we are is UK is formally implemented affordability checks, actually for most players, but that really just involves if a player spends more than it's a couple of $100 a month is where the level will be. Then the operator needs to check that they at least don't have court proceedings against them or bankruptcy filings. So that's at a fundamental level. But the industry and the UK Gambling Commission are running a pilot program that goes a lot deeper than that, when basically where high spending players should be, how can operators use credit agencies, etc., to evaluate the financial means of higher spending players to address this issue of affordability. There's a pilot program ongoing around that, and we'll learn the lessons, initial lessons of that over the course of 2025. Simultaneously, the slightly different framework, but the Netherlands has implemented something quite similar. So what we're seeing is affordability being applied in practice in several major European jurisdictions, and I think the debate will continue to go. And I think our view of Vixio is the notion of affordability is not going to go away.
Yeah,
it's more a question of how, where, and when, rather than if affordability will be a kind of a regulatory requirement in the industry in general. Again, I think it speaks to the idea that policymakers are attracted to the idea that there should be some regulations that prevent gamblers from spending beyond their means. I don't think that's going to fade into the background. It's more about figuring out different structures and where they may be more effective than others.
It's an absolutely interesting issue to follow and how it will be implemented. But another report that Vixio just released is entitled Brazil Online Gambling Playbook 2025. I think Brazil is going to be an absolutely fascinating market to watch. The Brazil market just launched online gambling on January 1st. And tell us what that launch looked like. I mean, how many operators launch, and what will online gambling landscape look like? Are there online casinos? Are there online sports betting? What can everyone expect from the Brazil online gaming market moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Brazil was a headline act of 2024 and will remain so 2025 for the industry. A lot of buzz about the Brazilian regulated market for kind of obvious reasons.
Sure.
But US market opening up post the PASPA ruling. Ontario and Canada has been a big new market, but Brazil is a massive new market. 200 million plus people that was formerly unlicensed and unregulated, and as of January 1st now we have a regulated industry in Brazil, so a major industry event for the global online gambling industry. We have seen, so as I mentioned, the market's gone live as of January 1st, and to date we have I think the last count, 68 licensees have gone live.
Wow.
Most of them with provisional licenses.
Okay.
I think it's about 55 of them provisional and a dozen or so permanent. But this is a big market with many players in it, and there are 100 plus applications still pending for licenses. So we will see a market that has many participants in it and a mix of global online gambling operators, the likes of Flutter, which owns FanDuel,
sure,
active in Brazil. Some US-based operators moving into the market slightly different ways. MGM and Caesars, different routes to market, but their brands are going into the Brazilian market. But there's also quite a lot of local players as well, a lot of Brazilian brands. So a real mix, melting pot of different operators, all participating in the Brazilian market. It is both sports betting and online gaming, online casinos. Again, I think that the number of licensees in the market reflects that. So we know from the US, online gaming generally is bigger than online sports betting from a revenue perspective. And,
sure.
you have more participants in the market when you have online casino games than you would if it's just sports. So this is a fully regulated market of all products, multiple operators, and at Vixio, we think this will become one of the largest regulated markets in the world. Our forecast that included in our playbook are for the Brazilian market to be worth nearly $3 billion in annual gross revenue this year.
Wow.
Roughly makes it comparable of size in its first year with like some New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Michigan. But then we see the market growing and more than doubling in size, reaching 6.3 billion by 2028, which a couple of variables, but that's likely to make Brazil the number 2 regulated market globally after the UK by 2028. Obviously, the US is bigger if you add up all the different states together, but treating each state as their own markets, Brazil is sort of different variables aside. Brazil should be one of the largest markets in the world.
Whenever a new market launches, online gambling platform operators will have to deal with new compliance issues, new rules, new regulations. They might even get some challenges in court. As Brazil's online gaming market progresses, what will be some of the challenges be for the operators in Brazil?
No, you're dead right. No market's the same. Something we've learned very much at Vixio. The process of launching a new market is always complicated. New regulations to comply with. No jurisdiction's the same. They copy and paste from each other. They borrow and they customize different things, but you never get exactly the same combination market to market. So every market is challenging, and Brazil is more challenging than average, if not uniquely challenging. There's a number of unique requirements in Brazil that aren't in place elsewhere. One that's sort of immediately coming to mind right now is your listeners will be keenly aware of the process of setting up a new sports betting account and KYC checks have to go through that. In Brazil, you also need to do a facial recognition check.
Oh, okay.
So facial recognition has to be part of your, multi-factor authentication to create an account and at different times log on to one. So that's a unique for Brazil thing. But on top of that, there are no shortage of compliance issues and regulatory uncertainty in Brazil as it's gone live today. There are pending court challenges against this law and new licensing regime that's just launched. The Brazil's Federal Supreme Court will hear those cases this year. There is what we've seen in a lot of, this is certainly Vixio's experience of looking at the global industry over many, many years, is it's very common for countries, states, different jurisdictions to launch legal online gambling markets, and then within a few months, within a few years, reconsider the rules and tighten up when it comes to responsible gambling. We just mentioned affordability, duty of care requirements, but around advertising, certain other areas, that's a global trend. Brazil is almost having that debate on a fast track basis where the market has just gone live, but there is legislation and different activity in the Congress to move the goalposts already with stricter rules on advertising and other areas. So we will, I think we'll see where Brazil is at the end of 25 be different than how it's launched on January 1st.
James, we're running out of time, but can you give out a website for Vixio so people can find out more about it? And if people want to learn more about the amazing tools Vixio has for the gaming community and even read the newly released reports on U.S. Sweepstakes, player protection, and Brazil. Also, if you have any social media addresses you want to give out so people can keep up with what's happening with Vixio.
Absolutely, yeah. I would encourage people as a starting point to visit our website, vixio.com, vixio.com. And if they go to vixio.com/research, you'll be able to obtain a copy of the reports that we've discussed today on Brazil, on Sweepstakes, on player protection, among others. You can also follow us at Vixio Regulatory on X, and also go to our Vixio Regulatory Intelligence LinkedIn page. We always welcome new followers, and it's our mission really to keep the broader industry and stakeholders engaged on these many moving parts of regulation.
James Kilsby, Gambling Compliance and Regulation Analyst from Vixio Regulatory Intelligence. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about Vixio's eye-opening reports on U.S. sweepstakes sites, its player protection outlook, and the brand new gaming market in Brazil. Vixio is such an important resource for all parts of the gaming industry. So please come back on and keep us updated about what Vixio is doing for the gaming industry, because it is always important. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
That'll do it for us this week. We'll see you next time on The Turnpike.